Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And thank you for joining us for our first ever AIEC Virtual Cafe. My name is Josephine Williams, and I'm the Events and Partnerships Manager at IDP Education. We're delighted to be joined today from colleagues from all around Australia and the world. And I can see that we're still moving through the virtual doors. So while we wait for everybody to get comfortably seated and virtually seated, I'll take this moment to tell you a little bit more about AIEC before I hand over to Alec and Haley. As many of you are aware, the conference on the Gold Coast this year has been postponed to next year due to COVID restrictions. So please do save the dates for next year, 5th to the 8th of October 2021. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our sponsors and our partners for their support. Until we're able to meet face-to-face again, we're offering a series of online events to help you stay connected. These events give you an opportunity to hear from industry thought leaders, keep you informed about updates in our industry, and allow you to network and collaborate with peers and colleagues. We have one exciting event coming up. On the 20th and 21st of October, we will be hosting the first ever AIEC Brain Date. This is a topic-driven, peer learning and knowledge sharing virtual event. It is an opportunity to make meaningful connections and have interesting conversations with people who share the same interests as you. So think of that burning question you have, or a challenge you're facing, or a great idea that you would like to share, or perhaps after today, a topic that you would like to discuss further. AIEC Brain Date will give you the chance to connect with others to keep the conversation going. If I've piqued your interest, please do stick around. We'll provide more details and instructions on how you can sign up at the end of this session today. Registration officially opens on the 1st of October in 2 days, but we're providing the activation code today to all of you who are participating in our session today. Now, today's virtual cafe will follow a similar format to our popular cafe sessions that we have been doing at the face-to-face conferences. We would love to hear your thoughts on this format. So please do keep an eye out for the poll at the end of this session. And if you have further comments or you would like to provide suggestions on how we can improve this interactive format, you can also email us at aiec@idp.com. You can find out more about AIEC and AIEC Connect events by following us on social media and also visiting our website. So I can see now that people are still coming through the virtual doors, but we will be closing very shortly. So it's time for me to provide a few housekeeping notes and get this session started. Now, the session today will be illustrated by Jessamy G, and illustrations will be available on the website in a day or two at the latest. We are also recording this session and the video will also be available, but just a note that the smaller group discussions in your breakout rooms will not be recorded. So it's also a reminder that this is a meeting and not a webinar. If you leave the meeting, you will no longer be able to come back in because we have shut the virtual doors. And also a reminder that there will be no Q&A at the end, but you are welcome to use the chat box to post your comments, your ideas and feedbacks for future topics of conversation. So now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce today's facilitators, Haley Shields and Dr. Alec Beninsky, partners at Edified. Edified is a leading education industry consulting firm with education specialists in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. Edified provides strategic consulting, solutions, and results-driven projects for universities, peak bodies, and industry organizations. Haley is a marketing, recruitment, and student experience expert and recognized leader in international education. She has held leadership roles over 2 decades from across Australia and New Zealand. And most recently, she was the first National Director International Student Experience for Education New Zealand. Equally, Alec has also been in leadership roles in international education for the last 20 years. He has held senior positions at UNSW Sydney, Study Group, AUIDF, Geo8 International Directors Forum. If you would like to find out more about Edified and its partners and what they can do for you and for your organization, please follow the link to their website, which you'll find in the chat box. And now, Alec and Hayley, it's over to you.
Thank you, Jo, and welcome. Kia ora from Auckland, New Zealand. I'm Hayley.
And I'm Alec.
We're really delighted to see so many colleagues taking the time to join us in this session today. Today is all about our individual and collective voices being heard and having an opportunity for conversation and dialogue. Before we jump into it though, let's take the temperature in the room with a quick poll. The poll will be coming up on the screen is, how are you feeling today? Easy question on the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. So just tap your answer, go with your gut feeling and submit. And we should be seeing the results of the poll coming up in a moment. How are you all going? Are we ready to see the answer? Oh, someone's feeling happy. Number 9, great. Okay, so we've got 55% feeling pretty good at 8 and 7. We've got the outliers, 6% feeling absolutely fabulous. And a few people, it could be better. So that's pretty much what we might expect with such a large group. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the temperature checking that we took across the sector over the last few months. So let's go back. Way back in February, which really feels like quite a lifetime ago, my partners at Edified were submitting our conference session ideas for AIEC Gold Coast. Looking back, I think I must have had a premonition. The title of my session was, Your International Education Career. Is it exhausting or energizing? It was focusing on well-being and resilience. Little did I know how the year would actually pan out for all of us in the sector. Edified was also approached by the conference organisers to see if we could help to design a cafe session. And looking at 2 or 3 challenges impacting the whole of the industry, we had the dreaded Friday morning session following the conference dinner, and the challenge was to make it compelling enough to get people along. Well, when it became apparent that AIEC Gold Coast wasn't going ahead, Alec and I took on the challenge to redesign a virtual session. We quickly realised there was something huge and profound happening in international education, and we needed a way to listen. Edified decided to send out an informal survey across our network across New Zealand and Australia. Firstly in April, at the beginning of the crisis and all the disruption, and again in June to see what had changed. We asked how people were feeling, and we asked about the organisational responses to the crisis and the impact it was having on students and on international teams. We asked about the challenges everyone was facing and how you were responding. People shared with us the plans being made for the future. We received humbling, sobering and inspiring responses. A few of our colleagues were interviewed on camera. We've got an edited clip now, which takes us back to a few long months ago. This is a 3-minute video. Just sit back and take it in.
Look, I've heard the term the perfect storm so many times. This has probably been one of the biggest, if not the biggest to date.
I think overwhelmed is an honest feeling at the moment.
I feel okay through this. I feel very fortunate.
I'm embracing the change. Look, I'm optimistic by nature, and I can't say that I'm enjoying it, but I'm really embracing it. I feel very, very calm, very optimistic.
We are all in this together. It's inspiring innovation.
Sharing ideas, looking for consistency.
It's very difficult to make a decision that you can stick to, because you quite often have to undo that decision literally a couple of days later.
First and foremost, the focus was on the current students that we have, both domestic and international, ensuring that we could have a smooth transition from face-to-face or on campus to online.
We have a couple of communication apps that we use where students can have a virtual chat to us. The university's also got something called the Virtual Village.
COVID support for students who were facing isolation or quarantine at the time and needed additional support. Also to deliver them some household supplies to ensure that they had the things that they need at home.
A hardship package that was released for students, more leniency around academic assessment, around GPAs, and how performance during this tough semester, might be impacted.
Everyone's going the extra yard. The level of stress and anxiety is quite heightened.
Not everybody had all the technology that they needed to perform their job.
I have a daily meeting first up with my senior managers.
A lot of staff, particularly those with young families, have found it really stressful to perform to their usual level.
It is very, very difficult.
The reality is that we have a commercial business that is going down the tube. Lack of revenue stream, is that going to mean that there will be FTE reductions?
And how do we reach out to students who would have liked to come to Australia but are probably reconsidering?
We haven't got an answer yet. We think we have, but that's the immediate challenge.
The partnerships piece is going to become probably more important than ever before. It's still a very green space.
If and when our market returns, international education sector, English language, it's going to return in the same format ever again.
Obviously, student diversity is still going to be a big player for us, and as always has been. The advocacy and lobbying part, I think, is much more important now than it's ever been in the past.
Absolutely looking to diversify markets. I had never seen the sector working so closely together.
I think Australia will get through this.
Universities have sometimes spent years transitioning their programs onto online, and suddenly within a few weeks we've got it working. Sure, it might not be perfect, but my goodness, it's been a tremendous effort, and I think for that we should all be very thankful for COVID-19.
Well, that's powerful every time I see it. There's something about those desolate streets, isn't there? And the stories it shared, we can all relate from our own experiences. And thinking about how best to share the story of our collective journey, we called on our illustrator, Jessamy G, to turn 1,000 words into one picture that says it all. Next slide, please. Great. And this is the picture. 2020, the year that COVID turned the world on its axis. For our sector, international education, this really has been the perfect storm. The confluence of events that has caused unthinkable disruption. Whoever imagined our borders closed, that student mobility would be halted, and our recruitment teams and even our airlines grounded. It's been a roller coaster of a ride of ups and downs, highs and lows, fears and insecurity, and we've often felt like there's no end in sight. Yet out of adversity, we've seen incredible empathy and compassion, driving support for our students hardest hit by the loss of jobs and the stresses of isolation. We've innovated virtually overnight and proved organisations can change and be flexible, even universities. We reimagined our workspaces and shifted our expectations. The challenge of the pace of change has been both exhausting and stimulating. We've had to farewell colleagues, and we've woken up at 3 a.m. worrying about our own uncertain futures. We are still in this together. We'll make this illustration available to everyone on the call today, but I want to say a big thank you for Jessime for really capturing the story of the journey and all of your responses that we received all those months ago. Jessime is actually with us today and she's illustrating the session, and you might be able to see her window there, and you can pin that. You'll be able to see her drawing live. So now that we've spent some time acknowledging our past, I'm going to hand over to Alec now, who's going to bring our focus into the future.
Thanks, Hayley. So we've looked back on the emotions and the uncertainty, the ups and downs, and the resilience shown in 2020. Let's now turn our attention ahead. So for today's workshop, let's consider, what does a sustainable international education sector look like ahead? There's a lot of talk out there about how we get back to normal. Well, what is the new normal? The old way of doing things won't necessarily be like the new way ahead of us. To achieve a sustainable international education sector, there are 4 key areas that we will consider today. First, there's recruitment and the education sector channels that drive international student recruitment, enrollments, and outcomes. Then there's partnerships, from pathways to T&E to exchange and study abroad provider partnerships, and the unique programs and products we promote through these partnerships. Student services and support looks after the arrival, the well-being, and ongoing skills development of our students once they enroll. And finally, we can't look past careers in international education, given the impact this crisis is having on so many colleagues across the industry. Applying sustainability to each of these key pillars puts them in the context of how we can ensure there is positive, productive, and sustainable longevity to these core pillars of excellence. So let's ask ourselves, as individuals and as a sector, how do we become better? How can we improve and potentially future-proof ourselves? As well, let's consider what needs to be left behind. What do we need to stop doing in order for us to survive and thrive in the years ahead? In essence, how do we get better? So let's apply these questions to each of these sustainable pillars as previously shown. Now, before we break out into our rooms, let's cover some instructions to make sure this goes smoothly. A quick review of how this is going to work. You will be automatically assigned or pushed into separate chat rooms. You don't need to do anything. Sit back and enjoy the ride. You will be grouped with about 6 to 8 other people. Yes, it is okay to talk to strangers. Your group will have 30 minutes to discuss the central questions against the sustainable pillars as shown. Now remember, breakout rooms are not recorded, so you are free to judge my choice of bow ties in confidential settings. Now, there will soon be a Google Doc link provided in the chat box. This will be where your group records its ideas. Our amazing illustrator Jessime will be watching the Google Doc live and be drawing and illustrating as the feedback rolls in. Each group should choose a room leader. Democracy can be both scary and exciting, so choose wisely. Your room leader will act as the scribe and will write group ideas onto the Google Doc. Please, let's only have one person in each room inputting onto the Google Doc. Now your group is your room number. As you are allocated to a breakout room, you will see the room number appear on the screen. We will give you a heads up a few minutes before we pull you back into the main room, and you'll have 30 minutes for this discussion. Now, if you are selected as a room lead, And only if you are a room lead, please rename yourself so we know which room you are leading. Why? Because we may call on the room lead to provide some thoughts and ideas collected from your group. We will do this when we come back into the main room in 30 minutes time. Once you are in your separate chat room, the room lead can rename themselves by clicking on the 3-dot icon as shown. And this might be at the bottom of your screen, or if you hover over your photo, it will appear as shown. The room lead will rename themselves according to their room number. If you have any trouble, just ping us and the ask for help message on the bottom of your screen. Now there will be a Google Doc, and the Google Doc looks like this. Record your answers against your room number row and against the corresponding issue you are addressing. I believe the administrator will shortly push the Google Doc link into the chat box. Now remember to note your breakout room number once you're in your room, and you can hover over the screen and it will show you. There is, as shown here, and there's an ask for help button, typically at the bottom of your breakout room screen. We will dispatch an AIEC superhero to answer your question. We will send you a notification before you're asked to come back into the main room in 30 minutes time. So let's begin. Get those creative ideas flowing and see you in 30 minutes. Welcome back.
Hi, welcome back. Now everyone's just making their way back. We can still see movement. And then we'll move into the next session, which will be some playback. So we'll be calling on some of the team leaders to tell us a little bit more about your discussion. We really enjoyed watching the live play in the document. That was great. So thank you everyone for participating in that and all your great ideas. So we're going to spend the remainder of the session actually hearing from the discussion in the groups. So it looks like we've got 90 or so back, so that might be everybody. No? Okay. Bear with us for 1 minute. Now, no doubt you can see the document yourselves. We can click on the link and read the content while we're waiting. Okay. Great, so let's get going with a little bit of feedback from the group, shall we? So Alec and I have been watching the feedback happening live. We'd like to call on some of the room leaders and probably get a couple of comments from each of the 4 pillars that we asked you to consider. But first, we've got another poll. How confident are you about the future following your group conversation? With 10 again being the highest. So if you could quickly click on a number there and submit. And we'll see if we can gauge the level of confidence in the room. There was some great future focused discussion there, really kind of looking at learning, learning from our experience and listening to students. I'm really interested to talk more about that. So we'll see the result of the poll. Should be popping up soon. Okay, this is interesting. So confidence level pretty high. We're a very optimistic bunch, aren't we, in the sector? Thank you for that. Okay, so I'd like to call on a couple of people to discuss a little bit more about your chat in the room. And when I call on you, I'd just like to hear from you for 1 or 2 minutes, please, so we can get round quite a number of the rooms. So the first I'd like to hear from Claire, who was the team lead in room 4. and particular interest in what you were talking about, roadshows and events and in the context of what you need to leave behind. So is Claire able to be unmuted and join us?
I've unmuted myself.
Oh, great. Even better.
Hi there. Yeah, so you got me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I have to say the food at this conference is terrible. The service is shocking. I can't find a waiter. But anyway, enough frivolity. What we're talking about with the roadshows, and everybody loves a roadshow, but it is a lot of cost and expense that can be a little bit less personal than, now my Google Sheet's gone blank, so I've got no notes. Just a sec. It can be a little, little less personal than the virtual roadshows where people can be having breakout conversations and things. People have found, or Colma found, that the agent fees are not quite as exorbitant as they used to be, particularly for a virtual roadshow versus the other types, the face-to-face type, and that there's a lot more opportunity for one-to-one service with parents and really connecting with them. And yeah, so that's quite a lovely thing to actually be able to speak to the person who's going to be arriving or studying online. And it's also much more appreciated to be able to get the agents are sort of using whatever they can, and one of those things is getting the education provider in the room with the parent to, you know, and that's been really well received. The massive roadshows are still necessary, but they just, in our discussion, we thought that they had a lower return on investment, but yeah, they are great fun, so we don't want to do away with them forever.
Yeah, but it's perhaps going to be a much a different mix and a more balanced now that we've road tested virtual. Yeah,
and also talking about the increased use of in-country staff who would have you know, maybe able to operate, that it may result in less staff operating from Australia, and perhaps people either relocating offshore or using the in-country experts more, and balancing it out that way.
Great. Thanks a lot, Claire.
No worries.
I'd also like to call now on room 2. Now, Ashley, you were the team lead for room 2. And could you tell us more about what you were discussing around listening to what students want? Is Ashley there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Nice to meet everybody. I've also lost my screen. I don't know what happened. But yes, we have all had to pivot so quickly. And no doubt our students have had to also pivot very quickly. And so listening to our students was about listening to what their challenges are, listening to what's working for them. Some of the things have been a surprise to us as educators and administrators, and taking those learnings forward into a longer term strategy. So we've had to basically have put in a short-term strategy just to become digital with all of our teaching and learning, and us and our students have learned a lot in this short amount of time. And listening to them on things like WhatsApp groups, some of the mediums that they are using to communicate with one another, to share their frustrations and to share their triumphs, and listening to them there on those platforms so that we can create future strategies going forward. And I think also with our students that are joining us virtually from overseas, allowing them into our classrooms virtually to engage with us virtually, and without thinking that the face-to-face is necessarily the best way forward for teaching and learning, but in fact we might enhance our teaching and learning through these virtual learnings and dealings with our overseas students. And I think just picking up on all of those learnings from the communications of all the various channels that we're having to use now.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's really well crystallized some sentiment that we really feel is going to, that the hybrid model is really going to be with us for the longest time, especially as we start to rebuild Yeah. Okay, thanks so much, Ashley. Alec, do you want to call on
Sure.
someone next?
Let's turn to the second pillar, which is about partnerships. Sarah Todd from room 14, you mentioned in row 2, you mentioned in the partnerships column about tailored local products and delivered in markets. Do you maybe just want to talk a little bit about that and other thoughts you may have about partnerships?
Yeah, like we had lots of.
Can we hear you, Sarah? I think you're unmuted now.
I'm unmuted. I think you should be able to hear me. Can you?
Yeah.
We had lots of Sarahs in our room, so there was lots of good ideas. I think with that one, we were talking about, in some cases, providers have been slightly protected from the impact of travel restrictions because they've been able to recruit in market and offshore programs. But at the same time, there have also been challenges for some of the models, particularly where provision of the program is reliant on academics or teachers flying up and down to deliver parts of that program. And that has created some discussions around the ongoing sustainability of those programs. Probably top of mind because I've just been to a discussion about that here. So we were talking about, different models and whether then you need to have the stronger partnership and more of a reliance on in-market staff or in-country staff and different models of quality assurance going forward. So how do we, so that it is still delivered in partnership, it's not just a licensing arrangement, but how do we better ensure the sustainability should travel restrictions or anything else impact us in the same way that they have this year?
That's great. And I think it's going to be that sort of innovation, that localization of some of this digital innovation is going to be quite interesting in the years ahead. Thanks for that, Sarah. I'd also like to turn to room 10, which I think was Liz Griffin.
Hi, Alex.
How you going?
Good.
You mentioned in yours about building value from a home country perspective, and just wondering if you want to flesh out those ideas.
I think we had quite a broad-ranging discussion around the sustainability, and really we had a strong theme that came through, which is you've got to look at the motivators for students to want to come and study overseas, and really whether we're delivering on what they want. So for example, part of the sustainability issue around marketing and recruitment is if you are consistently competing on particular aspects of what you propose, such as price or flexibility in entry requirements, or some of those other factors, are you really going to ever get to the potential of being able to build a proposition which is around actually what the student wants as an outcome anyway? Because they could go anywhere in the world to receive a degree program. They seek particular things from Australia, and whether we're really matched in terms of the markets that we're in or the segments of those markets that we're channeling, are they a match for what we need to build sustainability? And in terms of what we're offering, does it deliver, or does it only deliver for a particular segment of the market?
Thanks for that. And I think that's really important for us to consider about what is relevant to the home country market and what's going to resonate. Thanks for that. Haley, why don't I turn back to you to maybe look at the student support services column.
Yeah, and thank you. I'd like to call on Alyssa, who was leading room 5. Alyssa, could you talk to us more about not losing sight of the student needs once things go back to normal?
Yeah, for sure.
Well-being.
No worries. Hi, everyone. We started our discussion by talking about the fact that during the real height of the crisis, everybody, no matter what job you did, sort of had to all hands on deck, drop everything you were doing, and often it was quite practical things that needed to be done to support students who were, studying with institutions and had very real pressing needs. And so for a time there, that just meant that students were literally every person's number one job and priority in the front of mind. And we talked about how great that was. You know, we're in the education business. We're actually all here because we want to see students going on to have better lives and better careers, and we just didn't, you know, thought that was a great thing from this crisis. So we don't want that feeling to leave. You know, as things go back to normal and bureaucratic processes and, you know, meetings sort of take over, we were talking about, how can we make sure that we don't drop off that student centricity? So just, you know, some examples were some of the new initiatives that might have gotten stumped up during the crisis, not to shut them down again once, once we're back on campus. You know, different forms of student support, advisory services, wellbeing services that got put in place by the different institutions during the crisis. You know, they're things we want to keep, not leave behind.
Yeah, and the resources were found, weren't they?
Yeah, and from unusual places. You know, I think so. ACU was telling us about how one of the, you know, some of the academics had come up with something, you know, and that was totally people doing things outside of their job description, just because the need was there and they could. And that's exactly the kind of spirit, which probably goes into the fourth column as well, around, you know, future careers. And we need to keep that sense of adaptability and filling the gaps as they come with us, rather than sort of going back into what our job descriptions, you know, very strictly might be.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Liz. So Alec, just noticing we've got about 5 or 6 minutes. Why don't we focus on our careers, on the career?
Sure. Mark Pettit in room 11. You, in your group, you talked, there's something that caught my eye about unis are going to become smaller but smarter. Maybe do you want to just flesh out some of your team's ideas, your group's ideas about careers in international education?
Yeah, sure. That was a line apparently attributed to a vice chancellor. I'm not sure which one though. So I just wrote that down verbatim. Yeah, I was really struck by my group's optimism, actually. I thought it would be a bit of a doom and gloom session about, you know, contraction of the sector and lots of opportunities. But actually people were surprisingly upbeat. And I think one of the major themes was this idea of a wrecking ball, or a great kind of, you know, earthquake, kind of shaking things up and destroying old forms, but creating space for conversations that couldn't be had in the past, and creating space for innovation, and also innovation or change in the way people were working. There's a lot of talk about people's jobs not being stuck anymore and them being broader, and COVID having actually forcing people to be broadened out and to cross-skill and to multi-skill and to work with people they'd never worked before, work on things they'd never worked for. So a phrase that came up was that COVID-19 has helped us be broader and better. So it's kind of like forced new skills on people, and I think people kind of found that invigorating and a positive for the future.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. Your team had quite a bit to say. Might just we've got maybe 1 more minute for comments. Priscilla, room 13. Did you just want? There was in your group mentioned about reinvention of roles to stay relevant. Anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, we're talking about how, and I apologize for the noise on the background, but in a cafe. We were talking about how people, first of all, the flexibility that everyone has had to do more professional development and learn about other opportunities and other careers, but how some jobs are becoming not as relevant, and people were having to work and reinvent their jobs so they can continue working. So, for example, developing courses that can actually be delivered online, and finding ways of transferring the work that they were doing for face-to-face delivery to online delivery.
Very true. I think that reinvention is going to be important as we move forward. So thanks for that. Right. I think we can. We'll move on, but I appreciate everyone's feedback into this playback session. What we will do is we will compile this information. It's already compiled on the Google Doc, but we'll just clean it up, and we will share that along with the the illustration that Haley showed earlier, but as well as the next illustration, which is the illustration that Jessamy is working on, which she's been working on live for this session. So that will all be artifacts of this event that we will, the AIEC team will send to you all. Can we go to the next slide, please? Right, so wrap up, one more poll, and in the spirit of transparency, we'd like to know how would you rate today's session, 10 being on the higher scale, 1 being on the lower. The poll should come up in just a moment. We do appreciate whilst we're waiting for this poll results to come out with anxiousness. We do appreciate everyone's time and feedback and participation. I think it's the participation that makes something like this successful in terms of everyone generating their ideas, being honest and being open about all the challenges you face, but I think also about all of the opportunities that we are potentially seeing for the future. So we are in it together. We'll just wait for that poll result to come up, and then we'll just have one more piece of housekeeping, and then we will be done. Great. Okay, good. Not bad. Not bad. So majority is 7 and above. So thank you. I'm glad that this was useful for all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Alec, and thank you, Haley, for today's cafe, for facilitating and for all the prep work that you've put in the lead up. And I know not just you, but also your colleagues at Edified. So thank you very much. I know we wanted to have this face-to-face, and that was the plan, to have this this cafe face-to-face on the Gold Coast, but this is probably the next best thing. If you would like to give us some comments, please drop it in the chat box, because we'll leave it open for another minute or so, or you can email us at aiec@idp.com if you have any suggestions on how to improve this format, or just to tell us how you would like to interact in the future with AIEC. As promised, I now wanted to share the sign-up instructions to join Braindate. So likely that the conversation today has potentially brought up some new ideas and you would like to continue sharing and collaborating. So AIEC Braindate is actually a great platform to do that. I encourage you to go to our website. The link is currently showing on your screen. So it's aiec.idp.com/braindate, and you will see a link there that says sign up, and then when you get to the platform you'll need to enter this activation code. So you'll see that there are already about 50 topics on our marketplace, which is the central place where this exchange of ideas happen, and you can book yourself into any Braindate already there, or you can create your own topics of conversation. So I really encourage you to go to our website now. This link is available to everyone in this session today, and we will be opening formally the registrations on the 1st of October. So we're thinking of different ways that we can interact with our community and help all of you stay connected. So thank you again, Haley, Alec. Thank you to everyone for participating, for coming today. Please stay safe, please stay well, and enjoy the rest of your day.